Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
The other day, I was driving home, and I see my neighbor kid at the bus stop.
Yeah?
I rolled down the window, and I said, "Hey, you want to ride?" He said, "No, I better not. I might miss the bus."
I read an essay several years back where the author was telling a story of going to the airport. While he was waiting for the layover or whatever, he stopped over and got fresh baked cookies, 4 in a pack. He was really excited. So he came over and set the cookies down and got out his paper. And there was a young man sitting next to him, late teens, early 20s. They acknowledged one another, and then he started reading the paper, and he took out one of his cookies and he started eating it. This kid reaches over and grabs a cookie out of his bag. He just glared at this kid. "What are you doing eating my cookies?" And he went, grabbed his next cookie. The audacity, the kid reaches down, grabs the last cookie. He's sitting here just fuming. The kid takes the cookie, breaks it in half, and gives him half of the cookie. How dare this kid treat him this way? What is this generation coming to? And the kid gets up. "Well, I guess my flight is here. We'll see you, sir." And then he walks away, and he's just furious about what's going on. And then his flight is called in. And as he gets up, he looks, and under his seat was his bag of 4 fresh cookies. And all of a sudden, this kid that had been such a loser and had eaten 1.5 of his cookies was the hero of the story, letting him eat 2.5 of his cookies. And he was such a nice kid about it. So often, when we are viewing our stories the way that we think they are, we're missing a crucial piece of the facts. We're missing some of what's going on. And we think we're the ones, we come with righteous indignation. How dare this kid eat 1.5 of my cookies? When really we're the ones eating 2.5 of his cookies.
Right.
And that's what we want to talk about today. Specifically, in this podcast, we are all about preserving relationships. How do we get along with one another when somebody comes out as LGBTQ? And even if everybody is on the same page and wants to be allies, there are still going to be difficult conversations to have. Those conversations could be anything. They could be the LGBTQ person saying, "Mom and Dad, you forgot my pronouns again. We need to talk about that." It could be the mom and dad of somebody coming out and saying, "We want to be supportive, but right now with the additional actions that you have, your attitude is not lining up. And so we need to talk about your attitude," or whatever. It could be the parent coming out. It could be an ally. For instance, maybe you are the parent and you are advocating on behalf of your child to grandma and grandpa. Or maybe you are the cousin in the family or somebody else advocating on somebody else's behalf. If you are alive and you have family members, you're going to have conflict. Well, if you're alive, you're going to have conflict.
Yes.
There will be some difficult conversations that come up, and that's what we're talking about. Now, we're specifically talking about conversations, a specific kind of conversation, where the stakes are high and where emotions also run high.
In this particular case, when you say the stakes are high, it's things like possible break in the entire family situation, where maybe somebody becomes estranged from the family because of something like coming out as LGBTQ. Those stakes are very high.
I recently had a friend actually just today reach out and tell me, I just checked in to say, "Hey, just checking in. I was thinking about you." And they said, "Yeah, this is actually a difficult time of the year because this is the anniversary of when I lost my connection with my family."
Wow.
And really, really hard. And just all of the pain that they went through. And I feel really bad for them. So these conversations matter a lot. And they can be the difference between having that loving relationship or having a strained relationship, or having no relationship.
And it's all about the technique, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And we opened with the story of the cookies because it's so indicative of how we can screw up our stories, how we can assume we've got all of the details. And we as humans are hardwired to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time you go through, you construct your story, and you don't stop to question, do I have all of the details? Because we don't possibly have time to do all of that. But yet, when it comes to our closest loved ones, if we don't stop and to take those two things apart, about here's what I'm seeing and here's my interpretation, it can be very difficult. So we're looking at a book here today called Crucial Conversations, and this comes from chapter 7 of this book, where they give, I think, just a fabulous framework for how you go about having these conversations, and they use the acronym STATE, STATE. And the first three are going to be what you actually do. So let's dive into that right now.
Okay.
S stands for
Share. Share your facts.
yes. Share your facts. Now, we're not sharing a story yet. We're trying to keep this as objective as we possibly can at this point. We're coming and we're saying, I want to have a conversation with you, but I don't want to I don't want to put you on the defensive, but I want to make sure that I'm not letting this go either. So I don't know everything that's going on. I'm just going to tell you what I have noticed.
Right. And what you want to do is you want to start with the objective. What do we want to do here? We want to keep this conversation comfortable. We don't want it to rise up into a debate.
Right.
But what we want is we want reconciliation. Now, you may not think that there's no need for that, but there is. There is. You need to really clear the air.
We're looking for anything that is objective between the two of you. What are the shared pieces of the story that you will both have in common? The example that they give in the chapter is somebody comes in late to work 20 minutes. Okay, now you could have that conversation and say, well, you lazy, no good son of a gun. you're late 20 minutes, and I knew you would be because that's all you ever do around here is you try to get out of whatever you can see. That's not going to go well if you're trying to preserve a relationship, in this case, a working relationship. But instead, if you say, I want to have a conversation with you, the first thing I noticed this morning that you were 20 minutes late getting in for work. Is that correct? Well, yes, it was. Okay, well, I'm not adding any interpretation to that at that point. I'm just saying, look, these are the facts. Now, as we're talking about LGBTQ plus issues, we could be talking about, hey, Mom and Dad, so this is what happened. I recall this a lot back in maybe our very first Thanksgiving after I transitioned. I had a really hard time helping the family understand why getting my pronouns correct was so important and how to correct things when it came up, how to say this is really hurtful to me. And so, for instance, I could say, you guys are doing it again. Don't you get it? This is really hard for me. And this is really, and then you guys would come back and say, well, don't you understand? We've known you for 40 years. And don't you understand that this is really hard for us? And now all of a sudden we've got to fight. And
I think we both said those things.
We probably did. And we were really good. I mean, none of us wanted to have a fight. But also, this was an important conversation for us to have. And eventually we were able to have it, but I don't think that we quite had the tools to have it really well. In fact, some of those, I feel like it wasn't until we had this podcast and talked through the whys and the hows and all of those things of pronouns
That's
that
correct.
It really became clear. And
yes, that's true.
Yeah. But all of those, so whatever it is, you share your facts.
Many years ago, Paul Harvey told a story about a woman who her husband said, "This community is a little rougher than I expected it was. To protect yourself, I think you should carry a gun." So she did. She went to the mall. She went in. When she came out, here were 3 teenagers in the car, jumping around and doing all this crazy stuff. She said, "Get out of the car." They locked the door. She took the gun out and she pointed it at him and she said, "Get out of the car now." Well, they scattered. Just then she looked up and realized her car was 3 cars down. And apparently that was a true story. So that we come to the T. Tell your story. Well, what does that mean? It means to explain your feelings about the facts. So you've stated the facts. Now you want to say, okay, you came in 20 minutes late. We could say, for example, well, you come in 20 minutes late 3-4 times a week, and that's not really good. Or you're leaving early every night, and this isn't really right. But you don't really want to go there. You don't want to deviate from the issue at hand. So you've already stated the facts. Stick with the facts. But now you come back and say, this is how I feel.
This is how I see it.
Yeah.
My interpretation.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're 20 minutes late. Now, my interpretation is that you then have done something that is an action that a bad employee would take. But I'm not committed to my story yet. I'm just telling you. I saw the fact here. And now I'm giving you my story right now, but I'm making it very clear that my story is separate from the facts. We agree on the facts.
Yes.
But now I'm telling you, so here's what those facts mean to me.
Another thing it means to me is the fact that if you come in 20 minutes late, other people notice, and other people think, well, I guess there wasn't any repercussions for that, so other people can start coming in late as well. That becomes really costly for the company, and it really makes it difficult for us to schedule a meeting at 8 o'clock when you come in 20 minutes late, or if you're here and we schedule the meeting for 8:30 and you come in at 8:40, we have the same kind of problem. And I don't want people thinking that you don't have the commitment. And I don't want myself thinking you don't have the commitment, because this is just one factor. But it's enough that I feel we really need to address this.
Now, let's take this to LGBTQ plus issues. I'll give you one that you can relate to really well, Dad. Imagine that you have a transgender child that has recently transitioned that you want to be supportive of, but you come in one day and you say something and you just are talking about something and she blows up and overreacts. And you think, what did I even say? I understand that you may have been in a situation like that.
I have been. You and I were out for a walk.
I don't remember the exact story. Yes, if you would remind me.
Sure. We were out for a walk, and your sister was walking along with us. And we were having just a normal conversation, nothing specific about you or anything else, but there was something apparently that set you off that I didn't understand at all, and Melanie certainly didn't understand, because she was not used to being with you all this time since she lives in another state. And
and I can tell you what it was. She wanted to take a picture. And at that time in my life, pictures didn't feel good to me. That was a boundary for me that I felt like I don't want to take this picture, because if I take this picture right now with how I feel right now about myself and how I'm looking and how I'm presenting, I'm going to end up feeling bad about myself, and I would really rather not do that.
But from our perspective, we didn't know that, and so we didn't do anything wrong. but we felt like you were really chastising us for the fact that she wanted to take this picture.
Yeah. And it caused a division between us for quite a while.
Yes.
We did eventually then come back and work through it, but it was quite a while on that. And I think I know it hurt her quite a bit, and it hurt me quite a bit. We both walked away not fully understanding one another. And I wish that we had at that point been able to come back and say, let me share the facts. The facts were, we were walking down the way and she wanted to take a picture of both of us. And then I reacted. Okay, but our versions of the stories were entirely different. My version was, this is going to feel really yucky for me. This is a personal boundary that I have. I don't want a picture of myself right now because that is going to bring up all of the dysphoria and all of the bad feelings that I have. And please, I'm begging you, don't do that to me because it's very painful for me right now. And her version of the story was, I don't get to be here very often. And I'm so happy to be out with her family. And this is a moment that I want to cherish and keep forever. And then I don't understand why you just got mad about that. Like you were just, well, I'm not going to do what you say. That was sort of her version of the story.
Yeah.
So we had two entirely different versions of the story.
Uh-huh.
What we needed to do at that point was to stop, to recount the facts, and then for each one of us to tell our story, share our interpretation. And that actually leads us then to the third point, STA, and A is ask for others' paths. So you've just shared your path. This is my story, and this is how I got here. This is what happened. But I maybe don't understand all of the details. I maybe have come up to the car that's not my car.
Yes.
Just held up the kids with the gun. I maybe have something that I'm missing here. What details are relevant to your version of the story that I don't know?
Exactly.
For instance, yes, I came in 20 minutes late, but what you don't know is that I just got a call telling me that one of my parents is in the hospital and is deathly ill and they may not make it through the night. So yes, I was 20 minutes late, and yes, I didn't come in and say anything about it. But my mind is kind of occupied somewhere else, and you've seen me. I've got a good track record. This is not something that I do. I think your story is not the right one. Or it could be lots of other things. I mean, who knows what it is? It could be, yeah, you know what? You're right. I was 20 minutes late and I didn't set my alarm and I need to get better about this. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The point about using this method is that this is the hard conversation that we don't want to have. We want to avoid it because we don't want to make the other person feel bad.
Right.
So when we feel like, well, my only way to do this is to say, well, you loser, you came in 20 minutes late. Or to say nothing at all. But when you do it this way, you say, I want to talk about the facts first. And then you can present the difficult truth by saying, now, I'm not accusing you of anything, but I want to tell you what this looks like to me.
What you referred to earlier was what is known as the sucker's choice. Either I address it or I say nothing at all.
Yes. And that's rarely the case that it's only two options.
Right.
This is the third option where we can come through. And the reason that this all works is that we're not ending with my story is the right one. We're moving right on to saying, please tell me your version of the story. I'm open to hearing what you have to say because I probably don't have all of the facts. And when we put my version of the story and your version of the story together, maybe we can come out with the right one. Those three things are not enough. We're going to go to the T and the E, which is going to tell us how we go about these 3 points. We'll talk about that after this.
I'm Chuck Reynolds, and I started listening to Transcendent because Joe is my friend. I keep listening because I have friends, colleagues, and family members who are part of the LGBTQ community, and I want to better understand their struggles and perspectives. I have become a supporter because I believe Joe and Raya are truly helping to preserve relationships and save lives. Join me in supporting Transcendent. Just go to transcendent.com, click on support, and select the amount you'd like to give each month. It can be as little as $3, and you can cancel at any time.
Now, these last 2 points are almost a way of restating our point 2 and 3. But this is the how we do these. So we talked about you start by sharing the facts and then you tell your story. But how do you tell the story? That gets us to the STA. And then now the T is to talk tentatively. When I tell my story, I'm not coming out like I have the correct pronouncement from the papal authority that This is how it is from on high. I'm instead saying, I don't have all the facts. By acknowledging that you don't have all the facts, you can share even the most difficult of stories because you're not making any pronouncements. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, I want to tell you how I see things. Are these things true? Yeah, those things are true. Okay. And then this is the story that I take from that. But I understand that my story might not be the right story.
And what you're doing is you're using soft language. You're not using in your face kind of thing.
We want to preserve relationships, and you don't preserve relationships by saying, see, you did it again.
Right.
What you do is instead you say, hey, we talked about this, and yet this was an issue anyway. Can we figure out what's going on? Or whatever your issue may be. Maybe it is that you are correcting on behalf of a family member that has recently transitioned, and you're correcting the rest of the family on their incorrect use of pronouns. Hey, look, Uncle Floyd, I know that you love James and that you support James in his transition. But did you realize that you called him by his old name 3 different times when we were having Thanksgiving dinner? I noticed that. And I noticed that you called him she about 4 different times during that. Those are the facts. Now, I'm not pronouncing judgment. And in fact, I'm going to try to assume the best. But I want you to understand the story and why this is important. And I'm going to share my interpretation of these facts. Is that when he comes here, he feels like he is now not welcome. And he's one of the most important people in my life, as are you. And if every time we come together, I feel like there's going to be tension between 2 of the most important people in my life, that makes things very difficult. And I want to find a solution where we can get through. So you've stated the facts, and then you have tentatively told your story. But then we move on to the last point. And this is the one that really makes it all work. This is the way that we do the asking for other paths, and that is we encourage testing. Encourage testing that not only are my facts tentative, but I'm going to ask you, which pieces do I have wrong? What am I misunderstanding? What am I getting wrong here? Lots of times you'll find that this story that's making you extremely angry, all you need to do is learn 2 or 3 other things, and you discover, whoa, I had it completely wrong.
Yeah.
I think about, one of the hardest situations in our time right now is the conflict in the Middle East. Who is right and who is wrong in that situation? Well, from everybody that I've talked to that really knows and understands, it really just depends on where you start the story. Because if you start it with, well, one side did X, well, then they're the bad guys. But if you go back one step, you actually see that, well, before that, the other side did Y. And if you go back one more step, you find out that the other side, and it's been perpetual retaliation, one side and the other and the other.
The Hatfield and the McCoys.
Yes. And we see that all the time. A lot of our family conflicts are that exact thing. And when we stop and we bring humility, this is just really a way of saying, love your neighbor as yourself. I don't like it when people talk to me as if they know everything and I know nothing. So why wouldn't I come and talk to them in a way that shows that I respect them and I believe that they have something to contribute to the story as well?
If you want to see how that conflict can accelerate, just watch little kids fighting. Well, you said X. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. And, well, you hit me first. Well, that's because you hit me. I did not.
The classic is the one kid that will come in and tease the other one incessantly until the other one finally acts up. And then will say, Mom, he hit me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then, of course, then they're trying to get the other child in trouble.
And what we're just talking about now is kind of the adult version of Mom, he hit me.
But we don't want that. Generally, this is going to be a solution that works when you're trying your best to avoid that. You know you don't want to hurt the relationship.
Correct.
But you know you're sitting with a story that's making you mad. You're sitting with a story you're just frustrated that it's not working the way that it's supposed to be. I don't understand why you did what you did, but that behavior was unacceptable. Or, I don't understand why you said what you said, or any of those things. I want to talk about it, and I don't think that I have all the facts, but I have enough of the facts that I need to make sure that we have this conversation, because if I let it go, it's going to just get swept under the rug, and all that I'm going to be doing is stewing about it until I can't hold it in any longer, and then I erupt out at you in anger, and that's way worse.
Correct.
Way, way worse.
Yes.
Than if I had dealt with it the right way to begin with. We sometimes feel like we're approaching and I have to be the jerk about it. But you don't have to be the jerk. By using these techniques, you can bring even the hardest of topics to talk about in a way that can make it acceptable, because you're only tentatively giving the facts and you're encouraging testing of your own facts and your understanding of the facts the whole way along.
Just remember the word state, S-T-A-T-E, with state being share your facts with a T, tell your story with an A, ask for others' paths, for others' ideas. T, again, talk tentatively. And E, encourage testing. State, S-T-A-T-E. And that will help you with a difficult conversation.
But of course, you have to come with the right heart and a right attitude to begin with. If you're not starting with the right foundation, even if you take all the right things, but you really dislike this person, you don't love them any longer, you're going to have to get that piece right first.
That's true.
And one great place to start with that is our podcast that we had last week, where we talked about the foundation for all of this. If you haven't listened to that one, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that one. We talked about how you can start with heart. Remember what's really important in all of this, and that you can find mutual values and mutual purpose together, and that those things together will help you to establish respect for one another, so that when you have this difficult conversation, you both know that you're trying your best to have it in good faith, rather than to just score points in an argument against somebody.
That is great. And I think that is a formula for success in difficult conversations.
Right. And one thing that will always score points for you is coming back and listening to this podcast. We're grateful to have you coming every Monday morning as we bring tips of positivity for you to live your best life right now.
And I would like to encourage you because it means so much to this podcast to share this with at least one other person. We've noticed that this has been happening in the past, as I've mentioned this, new listeners and old listeners alike. Find one other person that can use this podcast and please share it with them. Get the word out there. Keep families together and save lives, one podcast at a time.
And with that,
We'll see you Monday.
This kid had eaten 1.5 of his cookies, letting him eat two eat 2.5 of his cookies.